everyone. Welcome to this new episode of our Student Spotlight series where we are able to showcase some of the work our past students have done. I'm Charlotte, one of the outreach coordinators here at CCIR, and it's our pleasure today to have Charlotte with us, who did our one-on-one mentorship program. So firstly, Charlotte, can you just introduce yourself? So tell us where you're from, what year you are in school, and then what made you seek out CCIR.
Great. Okay, so hi, I'm Charlotte, and I'm right now currently a year 12 student at Chinese International School, Hong Kong. Um, and I have a IB, I'm doing the IB subjects right now, and one of my focuses is History HL, Economics HL, and English HL. So, yeah, like I'm really honored to be here today to share my paper. Thank you.
Great. And then can you walk us through, give us a general overview of the one-on-one mentorship that you did? Kind of what was your topic?
Okay, so I started with like I didn't have like a set research question going into the 101, but I knew I had an interest in history and economics, so I went to the course with Dr. Zerlash, and we talked about how my different interests could lead me to a research paper topic. So we started with current world affairs because I was interested through my different school extracurriculars such as the speech team, law society, and so on. So we started there, and I guess, like Ms. Dr. Zerlash introduced me to how politics could influence economics, and I was just really interested in that. So we started talking about current world situations, like the intense relationships between China and US and Trump's 2025 tariffs. And then I was really interested in that. So Dr. Zerlash suggested that we could perhaps do a research paper on how politics intersected with economics could influence different firms. So, my research topic is basically on political economy and how this kind of like historical longitude analysis on different firms, especially Apple, how they evolved to geopolitical risks, especially with a focus on China-US tensions. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And did you have experience with kind of the idea of the political economy as a subject beforehand, or was this kind of a new subject for you?
This was definitely a new area of focus, because it was like a interdisciplinary like subject, and I didn't really like come into contact with such like intersections of subjects before with because I only had a focus on economics beforehand. So this was relatively new to me, and but then it was really interesting because it was new. And went over like it was especially interesting how it connected to current world affairs. And it was just fun analyzing like different um, world issues going on right now and connecting it to some aspects of my different subject areas, such as, for example, history, maybe like how the COVID-19 or the first Trump administration kind of affected those firms, and then also with econ, because how do those tariffs evolve over time? So it was kind of like a mishmash of my different subjects together.
That's very interesting and really great that you were able to get that interdisciplinary work on subjects that you're interested in. So now we'll shift into discussing your specific research paper. So you gave us kind of a general overview or a little snippet already. Can you go into a little bit more depth on what you looked into, maybe what your research question was, and kind of how you formulated that research question?
hmm Okay, so my research question was kind of focused on the adoption of nearshoring and friendshoring trends in this kind of fragmented world, and I had a focus on the case of Apple. And the general gist of my paper is basically looking at how US-China tensions, so from tariffs and trade wars to COVID-19 and Trump's second term, kind of push those big firms like Apple to switch to friendshoring and nearshoring to cut risks. So I kind of traced Apple's story in four stages. I started with like when China joined the World Trade Organization, and Apple kind of saw this opportunity in China, and they moved their entire market, supply chain market, to China. And then I kind of looked at how the first shock was kind of like the first Trump administration, and they imposed the 25% tariffs, which kind of shook Apple's supply chains a little bit, but they kind of still stayed in China. And then they had the second shock at during COVID-19, and that kind of like really showed them that, oh, we needed to diversify our supply chains in order to not face any more shocks. But Apple CEO kind of like said, we're still going to move our entire chain, keep it in China because it's too expensive to move out. But then right after COVID-19 came the second Trump administration, which immediately like vamped the tariffs, and they imposed really harsh tariffs on China as well. So at this point, basically, like Apple is like, okay, we kind of gotta like start looking into different options, diversify, and at this point, like other firms start following suit as well. So I kind of also compare Apple's journey with Samsung and Motorola, which kind of move at different paces, but they kind of all move towards this friendshoring technique. So it's kind of like how those different firms, through those different shocks, kind of move towards adopting such strategies. Yeah, so that's basically the focus.
That's very interesting. And can you walk us through your research methods? Like, kind of what type of data were you looking for? How did you find it? How did you analyze it?
Okay, so I definitely looked at my literature review, and Dr. Zerlash, sorry, let me close the window. Dr. Zerlash provided me with a lot of different literature reviews, such as Freyden and um, other literature like economists and their works. So I definitely looked at those. And since my research, it's not really like I can go out and get data because it's in a forever changing state. So I basically looked at a lot of cases. I dug for interviews with containing CEOs' statements. For example, Tim Cook's kind of statement on how Apple changed from when they first joined China's supply chain market and how it changed into COVID-19 and then into the second Trump administration. So I definitely look for different perspectives from major like players from different companies. I also kind of looked at data from the World Trade Organization and also China's kind of perspective, because I also have access to China's kind of social media and media content. So I kind of looked at how they framed the entire situation. So I had like this Western kind of outlet and this Chinese kind of outlet all balanced together. And so I basically made my conclusion from analyzing what I could find on the internet, case studies, empirical studies, and also lit review. So that was how I kind of came to my not relatively new, but some unique conclusions that I got. Yeah.
Nice. And then can you give us an overview of what your findings were and what conclusions you made?
Okay, yeah. So my findings were definitely kind of like built upon all of those case studies that I looked at. So it could have, like maybe other economists came to this conclusion or similar conclusions, but I made this conclusion on how the supply chains split, kind of like this India Vietnam boom in firm moving their supply chains to India and Vietnam for friendshoring. And so China kind of shrunk in supply chain development, especially from multinational firms such as Apple. And I came to the conclusion that firms were actually prioritizing safety over efficiency. And maybe that perhaps isn't the best for the economies, but it is what they're trying to do after experiencing all of those shocks from past decades. And they are prioritizing this kind of safety net over the optimal efficiency for economy. And so I think basically from my both my four stages, starting with WTO, World Trade Organization, until second Trump administration, different firms are just moving towards adopting nearshoring and friendshoring trends, even though they're moving at different paces, we definitely see a clear trend of them moving away. And with Apple particularly, like they are definitely moving their supply chain away from China, but they can't do it fast like Samsung because they have invested so much energy and money into the Chinese markets already. So it's not like they can move away from it immediately like Samsung. But just because they're not moving away right now doesn't mean that they won't move away in the next 5 years or so. So that's what I'm looking at. And right now I've basically kind of identified this trend, or maybe not I identified it, but like from the conclusions that I got, that they're definitely moving away and trying to diversify their supply chains, and different firms are realizing that they can't put one egg in a basket, they had to split their eggs into different baskets, and that they're adopting strategies such as nearshoring and friendshoring.
That's very interesting. Do you think that this was what you were expecting to find, or were your findings a bit surprising to you?
I think this was definitely slightly surprising for me because although from recent news articles that I read beforehand, I already knew that Apple was moving away. It's just to the extent that like they stayed in the Chinese markets for quite a long time because they could have moved out like Samsung after, for example, the first Trump administration when Samsung moved out 2019, but they didn't. They chose to continue staying in the Chinese markets because of all of the benefits it gave them, the cheap labor and the cheap manufacturing costs. And so it really surprised me how they had 90% of their supply chains still in China, even after the first shock. But now that they're slowly moving away, it's clear that like they can't move away so suddenly because of their invested effort into the Chinese markets from 2001. So I think it definitely surprised me a little bit with that. But also it wasn't that surprising as well because of the pressures in relationship between America and China. So I think I definitely did find some new interesting conclusions based on my research, but this was generally the direction I was kind of headed at first as well.
Okay, great. That seems like a very interesting paper. So now we're just going to shift into discussing your general experience with CCIR. So firstly, can you tell us what your experience was like in the program doing a high-level research project like this as a high school student?
Yep. So I remember that the first time I kind of had a lesson with Dr. Zerlasht, she immediately pulled out a PPT with different terms like political economy and friendshoring, nearshoring on the screen, and I just remember feeling really overwhelmed because those terms were really like advanced and I had no idea what was going on. So, but then I slowly got used to it because she kind of like told me that like she was only used to teaching graduate students. So she was like, okay, I'll tone it down a little bit for you. And we went over all of those terms together and we kind of broke it down into simpler terms and concepts. And it was really interesting to me because like for me, before then, I had only accessed like different news outlets such as like BBC or like South China Morning Post, where I got my information from about world events and political economy. But she provided me with so much more academic and advanced papers that really helped me in delving deeper into my topic. And all of those perspectives, like all of those articles, just kind of built a different narrative because they all had their authorial voice shining through, even in an economics paper, which you would expect to be slightly mundane and boring. But I could definitely see that all of those economists had their own styles of writing and also their advanced concepts shining through. And so that kind of inspired me to like also let my own like writing style shine through, even though I was talking about something so serious and like linked to current world affairs. So it was definitely intense, but eye-opening for me.
Nice. I think you brought up a great point that it is such a different learning experience between kind of reading the news and looking at social media or just general articles and then reading academic articles. It definitely is quite different. So that's great that you were able to get that experience. And then can you talk about how this paper, so you've said that the course itself or kind of the content of the course was a little bit more advanced than you were used to. Can you talk about the experience of writing the paper? Had you written a research paper like this before, and what was that experience like, and how did your mentor help guide you through that?
Okay, so definitely not because I've never written a 6,000 plus word article before, a research article before, and the extent to this depth of research was quite intimidating to me at first because I just didn't know if I could write that much. And so Dr. Zerlash really helped in this process, and I definitely had many questions for her throughout this research process, which she patiently answered. And yeah, like so in the past, I would say like a high school essay would probably be like 1,500 words, and you didn't really need to come to a new analysis or a new conclusion. But for this article, it was 6,000 words plus. I had a four-stage model, and I had like I think 10 plus cases or literature reviews. And I also had to identify like a literature gap, which was really interesting to me because it's kind of like I'm creating this new research and this new conclusion on my own. And that was very different from like what I was used to writing in high school, where I just didn't really need to come to a new conclusion. I could kind of elaborate on what like other writers wrote in their past, but I didn't really need to come to a new one. So I was kind of like, as I mentioned, intimidated, but Dr. Zerlash kind of, she was like guiding me towards this gap that I could identify. And while when I had questions, she also patiently answered them. And she also told me that I should, instead of worrying about like what I should write and what the literature gap was, I should read all of the articles, scholarly articles she sent me, and learn from how those political economists wrote and their style, which actually really helped me because I really grew to like this one economist's writing style, which was Frayden, and I just loved the way he wrote, in which like he identified the gaps really naturally, and he wrote as if like everyone could understand, not just economists. So I was like, okay, this is less intimidating now because like if a such a famous economist like him can write to make all of his readers understand what he's talking about, then I can do it as well. So I think Dr. Zerlash just really like taught me how to like learn from writing. Just start writing and you'll understand how to format your entire essay and your argument. And so yeah, there was like no further questions asked, and I kind of submitted the draft to her and waiting for her final comments. Yeah.
Nice. And then just a few more quick questions for you. The first one, do you think this course has given you any insights into your future? Has it maybe informed or shaped how you think of your path moving forward at all, either academically or professionally?
hmm Okay, so yes, definitely, I would say, because this intersection between economics and I would say politics, as well as kind of like history a little bit, really showed me that like I kind of wanted to focus on this exploring world affairs. Although I would say that I haven't decided on a set major yet, it's really shown me how that, like I can tie current world affairs with subjects like basic subjects like economics and politics in school. And I think it really pushed me to kind of explore this intersection between subjects. And it showed me that like instead of like just exploring one subject alone, I really wanted to explore like an intersection of different subjects. So maybe like humanities or like political science is like a potential like interest for me in the future. And I think this course just like kind of really showed me that because of the connection to like all of those like disciplines and how it taught me kind of like to use my knowledge from different courses in one research paper, which I didn't really do before. Um, so yeah, like as I mentioned, like probably in the past, I would just write a economics paper or a history article, but never like an intersection. So I think this research experience really taught me to kind of look in between the two subjects and come to a conclusion like that.
Nice. And then my last question for you, what would you say to someone who asked you what the value of doing a project or a program like this is, especially for a high school student?
I think that something I would say to someone who would potentially be interested in doing this would be, first of all, the the resources that the teachers are able to give you here, the professors are able to give you here is incredible. They have an extensive amount of like resources, articles, papers, lectures that you probably just can't get online. And I definitely tried this. I tried to search up the papers that my professors gave me, and they weren't available online at all. So I think this is definitely, first of all, it's a place where if you wanted to explore something in depth, like nearshoring and friendshoring and intersections between different disciplines, this is the perfect kind of course for you to explore that because of the extent to which the professors have those resources and knowledge to help you. And I would also say like just the flexibility of exploring any topic you want because the professors here they're really just the pioneers of their field, and so if you wanted to diverge from a path, for example, if I wanted to focus on not Apple but maybe like Apple on a country level, they would be able to provide you with that. And or even if I asked them questions such as when I didn't even determine my research question yet, they really guided me towards a research question. And I just don't think that is something you'll get by doing the research on your own. Just because I would feel confused, I wouldn't have a direction. But with Dr. Zerlash guiding me and really just kind of like when I'm straying away from the path, she'll like lead me back into the topic was really helpful. And finally, I would say it's just the fun you'll have with discussing with your professors because like I really grew like quite close to Dr. Zerlash and she even told me possible career paths to explore in the future. And so I feel like it's just really fun to have this discussion with your professor with such like a professional in the field, and they'll introduce you to many different things like outside of even your research paper. She could introduce you to like different as I said, career paths or just different opportunities that you could have that I wouldn't have known otherwise.
I think that's great. And it seems like you had a really wonderful experience, which is really lovely to hear. So that brings us to the end of our spotlight interview. Thank you so much for chatting to me and congratulations again on your nomination to our series.
Thank you.